Chapter 9. Hypothesis Testing with One Sample. Introduction. Chapter 9 discusses hypothesis testing with one sample. Hypothesis testing involves collecting data from a sample and evaluating it to make a decision about whether or not there is sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis. This chapter explores the concept of hypothesis testing, the difference between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, the four possible outcomes of a hypothesis test, and the probabilities of type 1 and type 2 errors. Learning objectives. By the end of this chapter, you should be able to 1. Understand the concept of hypothesis testing with one sample. 2. Differentiate between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. 3. Identify the four possible outcomes of a hypothesis test. 4. Calculate the probabilities of type 1 and type 2 errors. 5. Apply hypothesis testing to real-world scenarios. Key points. Hypothesis testing involves collecting data from a sample and evaluating it to make a decision about the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is a statement of no difference, while the alternative hypothesis contradicts the null hypothesis. The four possible outcomes of a hypothesis test are true positive, true negative, false positive, type 1 error, and false negative, type 2 error. Type 1 error occurs when the null hypothesis is rejected when it is actually true, while type 2 error occurs when the null hypothesis is not rejected when it is actually false. The probabilities of type 1 and type 2 errors are denoted by alpha and beta, respectively. Type 1 error is considered more severe when the consequences of rejecting the null hypothesis are greater. Real-world application. One real-world application of hypothesis testing is in the field of medicine. For example, a pharmaceutical company may conduct a clinical trial to test the effectiveness of a new drug. By collecting data from a sample of patients and analyzing the results, the company can make a decision about whether or not there is sufficient evidence to reject the null hypothesis and conclude that the drug is indeed effective. This information is crucial for making informed decisions about patient treatment options and improving healthcare outcomes. Conclusion. Chapter 9 explores the concept of hypothesis testing with one sample. By understanding the difference between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, as well as the four possible outcomes of a hypothesis test, you can make informed decisions based on the data collected from a sample. The probabilities of type 1 and type 2 errors play a crucial role in hypothesis testing, and it is important to consider the consequences of these errors in real-world applications. By applying the concepts learned in this chapter, you can analyze data, draw conclusions, and make informed decisions in various fields, including medicine, research, and business.